Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to the Mother Gaia Birthy Pod. In this episode, I'm joined by the incredible Anna Barker, a woman who truly stood in her power to birth on her own terms. Calm and self-assured, Anna navigated her pregnancy and labour with fierce self-advocacy, making sure her voice was heard every step of the way. She understood what she wanted, and she made it happen. We talk about the choices that she made, the obstacles that she faced, and how she remained grounded and in control, even spending a big part of her labour at home doing her hair as a distraction. Anna's story is a testament to the power of trusting yourself, knowing your rights, and creating a birth experience that aligns with your values. If you've ever wondered what it truly means to take ownership of your birth, this is the episode for you. Let's dive in.
My name is Anna. I live in Southern California, and I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I'm currently 32 weeks pregnant with my second daughter. And I'm mostly a stay-at-home mom. I do work part-time as an EMT on an ambulance, so that's what I do.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, cool. Nothing like stressful job there, eh?
You know what? I think honestly, being home with a toddler can sometimes be more stressful, but
Yeah, no,
and
I can see that.
yeah, but that's a nice little break, from like
Yeah,
my slow pace life at home. But I like
yeah,
it. So,
yeah, cool, awesome. So we're gonna sort of chat about your first birth.
sure.
So do you want to just sort of start us off where I generally ask people like, how did you find out you were pregnant? Where were you? What was the situation?
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, at the time, I was working full time. I was living with my boyfriend at the time, and I just had noticed that I missed my period. So like anyone else, I take a pregnancy test, and yeah, I was pregnant. I was 24 at the time, and I didn't really know like how I wanted to go about my birth. I knew that my just like most women, like what did my mom do? What did my aunt do? I knew that my mom was 18 when she had me, and that she had me like with no epidural, but I know that she was induced and that she had me in a hospital setting. Um, but yeah, so I just that's kind of like to the extent of birth that I knew at that point. I was just like, oh,
Yeah,
women give birth in hospitals, and you either get the epidural or you don't, and that's kind of all I really knew.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like most people who've never had to be in the situation, you go into it really blind.
Right. So it wasn't until like a few months into the pregnancy I really started to think about how did I want my birth to go? Because I did what most women do, get an obstetrician, schedule your prenatal appointments, go in for your first scan, confirm the pregnancy, all that stuff. And it was at like that, like I guess those early appointments, like in the first trimester, I just started thinking like, or looking more into like how do I want my birth to go? What do I want it to look like? Because I feel like as soon as you tell people you're pregnant, and if you even voice like, oh, I think I could do this without an epidural, you get stories of women that are like, oh, good luck. Yeah, like I was at 3 centimeters and I needed it, and
Yeah,
and it even comes from like your own family sometimes. So early on, I kind of learned like, okay, I have to close myself off from that because that's not helping me.
yeah,
That's not encouraging.
yeah.
So yeah.
So
And uh, I don't know if you're familiar with the Mama Natural brand or that course. I purchased that. I think it was like $100 or something like that. It was like self-paced courses online just to kind of teach you about, um, I don't know, like pregnancy and birth. And
yeah,
honestly, I think I typed in like mom natural something on Google, and that was the first thing that came up.
yeah,
So naturally, I just was like, oh, okay, I have $100. I can, buy that
yeah,
course. So yeah, so I did that, and then that's when I started learning like, oh, there's a physiological process to birth. There's a way it kind of progresses, and it's not the same, identical for
yeah,
everyone, but there is kind of like a standard of like, there's active labor, then there's your transition, then there's your pushing. And I had never, I mean, as a 24-year-old woman, I had never heard of that, like I
yeah,
wasn't taught in high school ed, I wasn't taught in like college health ed, like nothing. And I'm
yeah,
like, what? Like, this doesn't make any sense. How did I not know about this?
yeah,
And I'm already pregnant. So I started learning about that. And then I watched The Business of Being Born documentary with my boyfriend at the time. And even after him watching it, he was even more sold. And so that kind of, I feel like that partner support of, supporting a physiological birth and a natural labor is even more crucial to a woman's experience in birth, because had it not been for him kind of encouraging me through the whole thing, you get scared. You don't know,
Yeah.
you hear all this conflicting information, and then it really matters to have someone in your corner and kind of support you through your decisions. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, so that's where I was at that point in my pregnancy. But yeah.
So how was your birth in the end then? Like, where did we get to?
Yeah. So, I at that point, I had been learning a lot about birth up until, birth and, like hospital interventions and, what to do. And basically what I learned from that course was that if you want the least amount of interventions in a hospital setting, you should labor at home as long as you can.
Yeah.
And then, kind of just show up for them to catch your baby. And so that's what I did. I labored at
Nice.
home. Yeah. And so my birth went to, or I'm sorry, not my birth, my pregnancy went to 40 weeks and 5 days. And I had my last obstetrician appointment at, I think, 39 weeks. And then she was like, okay, well, if you don't give birth in 2 weeks, we'll, talk about non-stress tests and possibly an induction. And I was like, what? Like, my pregnancy's been so great. Like, why would you even throw the word induction in there? But,
Yeah.
yeah, because it was like, I mean, I had a very like straightforward, like low risk, like nothing was medically, indicated
Yeah.
in my pregnancy. But yeah, so 40 weeks, 5 days rolls around, and I have zero signs of labor. Like,
Mhm.
it doesn't look like I'm giving birth anytime soon. Like, I had no signs. People are like, oh, I had this, my belly dropped. I had nothing,
Yeah.
nothing. And I remember I woke up that day and we were already, my fiance and I were already on like maternity, paternity leave together from work. So we were just home waiting for the baby. And I remember we wake up, we eat breakfast that day, it's normal. And then around like 3 p.m., I start feeling like I have like not diarrhea, but almost like loose stools. Like I have to just keep going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, maybe it was the burger I ate this morning or whatever. And then I noticed like after the second time I go to use the restroom, I lose like part of my mucus plug. Like it's kind of, red or pink. And I'm like, oh wow, I think this is it. So I tell my fiance, I'm like, oh wow, I think this is the start of labor. But I know at this point, because everything I've learned, it can be a day from now, it can be 2 days from now. It's not
Yeah.
like, gonna happen right then and there.
Yeah.
So I tried not to get myself too excited and, overwhelmed. So I just kind of like spent the rest of the day here at home, really. Like that was around 3:30 p.m. And then I kept having loose stools for about an hour. And I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. But I was like, whatever, maybe it's whatever I ate. And then and my stomach almost felt kind of like bubble guts almost. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I did eat something weird. So I don't know. In my mind, I'm like, this is not labor. This can't be. This is
And yet actually it is the first sign of labor. Yeah.
yeah, and it is. But I guess gaslit myself through the whole thing. But
Well, it's
yes.
one distraction technique, I suppose.
You know what? And that distraction technique ended up being the theme through my whole like labor. But anyways, so yeah, that's about an hour into loose stools. Then I decide I'm gonna go take a hot shower. Maybe that'll help my stomach. And yeah, so I decided to take a hot shower. The loose stools finally calmed down, and then I feel like I instantly started getting like period like cramps. And I'm assuming that was like the early stages of labor, because right immediately, like after I started noticing them, I started counting them, and they were like, I think 5 minutes apart, lasting like 1 minute. Like they were already like really turning into contractions, really. And so I was still at home. I had no intention of going to the hospital at that point. Because I just thought like, oh, maybe this is like, I don't know, like really, really early labor. This could take days. I don't know. So I decided to start doing my hair. So I started like, I blow dried my hair. I started straightening sections of it. And I did that for like 4 hours. So from like 4:30 p.m. to like 8:30 or like 8 p.m. I did a section of my hair, and then I'd feel a wave of a contraction and just kind of like, I don't know, put the straightener down and go do something else, like rock on the ball or whatever. And then once I felt it kind of go down, I'd get back up, go do another section of my hair, and I distracted myself pretty much for 4 hours of active labor doing my hair. And yeah, and I just kept distracting myself because I had something to do with my hands, and I was staring at myself in the mirror saying like, okay, I need this part and then this part. And I was so, honestly, I think I distracted myself so much from like the contractions just by doing my hair, and that I made it to like when I finally finished my hair, I was like, whoa, these contractions are really intense. And I
Yeah.
kind of didn't realize until I was doing nothing.
Yeah.
And um yeah, so then it went on, then it turned into like my fiance trying to like comfort me, console me. He knew about the hip squeeze and certain little things like that to kind of get me comfortable. But I was getting to a point where I was like, oh, I can't really get comfortable. Like they're coming on pretty, quickly.
Yeah.
And he was like, why don't you, bounce on the ball or do something? And I'm like, no, it's not going to work. And then I sat on the ball and it was like 10 times better. And so I was like bouncing for a while. And then I remember I kind of hit this wall because I started crying, and I just was like, I couldn't even tell you what I was crying about because it wasn't necessarily painful, but I
Mm.
guess just the release of emotion,
Yeah.
just crying. And so at this point, it was probably like, it was nighttime already. I spent the whole afternoon doing my hair, bouncing and all that stuff. And then around like 8 p.m., 8:10 p.m., I started feeling what I think was like a little bit of back labor. It wasn't as intense as I hear some women describe back labor, but it was definitely like, oh, I feel like my back's cramping or something,
Yeah.
my lower
Yeah.
back. And I decided to use a heating pad and go sit in the nursery that we had set up. I had like a reclining rocking chair. So I put the nursing pad, or not the nursing pad, I put the heating pad on my lower back and just kind of reclined the recliner and just kind of, I don't know, tried to get comfortable that way and like soothe my back.
Yeah.
As soon as I did that, like 10 minutes into that, we hear a pop and my water breaks. And I was like, "Oh," and then I could feel my legs kind of shaking. I don't know if that's the jitters, the nerves, or like the pain,
Yeah.
the
The
sensations.
adrenaline rushing through your body.
Yeah, and I really did see my legs shake a little. I was like, "Oh, okay." So then I see my fiance pacing in the hallway. He's like, "Oh, what? I heard that." He's like, "Was that your water?" I'm like, "Yeah, my water broke. We gotta go to the hospital." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "Go pack the car. Go get the backpack in the car." And he's like, "Okay." And so I'm like, "I'm gonna go rinse off, put on like some different sweats or something, and then I'll walk downstairs." And so I do that, and I mean that was like the fastest shower of my life. And he probably
Yeah.
packed the car like the fastest he's ever
I
packed a
just
car.
opened a window and thrown everything in.
Yeah. And then he's like quickly back upstairs by the time I'm like shower's done. I'm just like trying to get my sweats on. And yeah, I had like a little gush of water. It was nothing crazy, but what was crazy is that was we both heard it. It was like
Yeah.
a pop, like a water balloon. And yeah, so that's what happened. And then the car ride to the hospital, our local hospital was about 25 minutes away, maybe 20. Um, but it felt like the longest car ride of my life because I was probably in transition in the car because it was like my legs were shaking, I was yelling, I was like arching my back, trying to get comfortable. And we made it to the hospital, and I was like, I can't walk from this parking lot spot to the ER door. Like, I cannot do that. So he runs inside, gets a wheelchair, and he wheels me into the ER because at this point in the night, that's the only thing that's open to go through. And so they don't see my belly at first, I guess, because I had like a jacket on or my sweats or something. And the ER like triage nurse is sitting at the desk, like, "Oh, what are you here for?" I'm like handing her my insurance card, and she's like, I'm like a little sweaty at this point because they're getting really intense. And she's like, "What are you here for?" I'm like, "I'm in labor." And it's weird how like as a woman you're still like conditioned to be like so like, "Oh, this is what I'm here for,"
Yeah.
you know. Um
Really meek
and
and
she's like,
mild. Yeah.
yeah, like try to like conceal it, right? But now I'm yeah, no. But anyways, she's like, "Oh, you're in labor." She's like, "Go upstairs." Like cuz the ER doesn't want to deal with pregnant women at all ever. So um, yeah, the security guard is like, "Oh my gosh, like I didn't even see you were pregnant. Sorry." And so she takes over wheeling me, and my, fiance is walking alongside. We go in the elevator, and it's funny because she's like trying to console me too, because she sees me like rocking back and forth, kind of sweaty, like, uncomfortable. And she starts rubbing my shoulder, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, they need to let you in the maternity ward like now. This is crazy. You're like really in it." And I remember we go up, and you have to like use the phone to get like buzzed in, and they're like locked doors and stuff. And so my fiance gets on the phone, like lets them know, like, "Hey, my wife is in labor. We're here." And they say, "Oh, we don't have a bed yet, so you gotta wait like 10 minutes in the lobby." And at this point, I'm like, "Oh my God, 10 minutes sounds like 10 hours," because
Yeah.
I'm really far in. Like I'm pretty sure I'm past transition. I'm almost like not hearing stuff around me because you kind of
Yeah.
get to this point in your labor. I mean, I would say like if you allow yourself to, you kind of just have to sink into it, or like I
Yeah.
did, distract yourself into it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like primal, like you're just kind of like in your zone. You're not really paying attention to what's going on. You're just, focused. And so um as soon as I heard like, oh, 10 minutes, I was like, okay, don't even think about it. Like just focus on trying to get comfortable in this little wheelchair. And then finally the doors open, and I'm like, thank God. And so they wheel me into a room, and the nurse asks me if she can if I can get on the bed, get the fetal monitoring strap on. And I'm like, yeah, you're gonna have to give me a minute because I can't just stand up right now. I've already like rocked myself into comfort on this chair. And so I finally, like a few minutes later, I'm able to get up, get on the bed. She straps this fetal monitor on, and I asked to be, well, ask whatever. The bed's already raised up, so I'm just like on my hands and knees, and I'm kind of like I let her put the fetal monitoring on, let her get the little blood pressure cuff on me. And then I'm just like rocking back and forth, trying to get comfortable. She's like, "Oh, fetal heart tone's great." She's like, "Do you mind if I check you?" And this is the first cervical exam I've had the entire
Yeah.
time, which I know isn't that normal for a lot of women, because a lot of like family members I talk to are like, "Oh, they didn't check you." I'm like, no, like I had a female obstetrician, and she never forced any cervical checks on me, but I know that is common in the US. Like a lot of women do get either forced or coerced into cervical checks, but
Yeah.
I didn't. So this was my first cervical check. And this nurse is really nice. She I think she was the charge nurse that night, but she asks, to check me, and I say yes. So I'm still like hunched over the head of the bed with the bed raised up and on my hands and knees, and she checks me, and she looks at me. She's like, "Oh, was your plan to labor at home?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that was my plan." First time mom. I don't think I end up in this situation kind of
Yeah.
unintentionally, but she's like, "Yeah, there's like nothing left." She's like, "You're probably going to push soon." And so I assumed I was like fully ready to die.
Yeah.
I was fully
Yeah.
dilated because she's like, "There's nothing left." And I'm like, "Well, what does that mean?" Okay.
Well, yeah, that's a very strange way to put it, isn't it? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Like, that you are fully, dilated. But yeah, so then at this point it was like, I want to say at this point it was already 9 p.m.-ish, maybe 9:30, when by the time like my water broke around 8:30 p.m. And by the time I was like getting my first cervical check in the hospital on a bed, it was like 9:30. So it was about an hour in
Yeah.
between. And I labored, rolled around. I asked for the peanut ball that I saw in the corner of the room. Hated that. Told her, "Get it away from me. Never mind." I was like, "I'm sorry. I don't want the peanut ball." And she's like, "Oh, it's okay." And so I just kept kind of rolling around, trying to find my position of comfort. I ended up getting back on my knees and kind of feeling my body bear down, squeeze down. And at this point, they didn't really, because I had only been there for a few minutes, so they weren't coming in and checking on me constantly. They were just like, "Oh, she's in labor. She's probably close because we checked her." And so there was like maybe one nurse kind of hanging around, but like in and out doing her thing. And finally, after like bearing down, squeezing, I just kind of felt my body like try to like, I don't know, squeeze, because I wasn't squeezing, but like mentally it just felt good to like kind of put pressure down there, and almost like that sensation of almost pooping. I felt
Yeah.
like and then I eventually was like, okay, being on my hands and knees is not helping. And even the nurse was like, "Why don't we try a different position?" I'm like, "Okay." So then I just roll over on my right side into like the fetal position. I just curled up with my legs closed, my arms kind of tucked next to me, like holding one of the hospital bed rails. And she started coming out. They're like, "Oh, we see hair." And so then I hear all this rush of people around me. And I was like, "Really? That's it? Like she's coming?" Like it, because my body had been doing all the work, you know. I
Yeah.
wasn't mentally in this like it's been this many hours and it's, you know, I didn't even think about that. Like, when I tell you I distracted myself, I really distracted myself.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think about how long it had been to that point. I didn't think about how much my body was like, you know, tensing up. And looking back, I wonder if I would have relaxed more because I did tense up. I was in the fetal position, rocking, like soothing myself. Just that's what felt natural. I wonder if maybe it would have been quicker because my whole labor from start to finish as a first time mom was about 7 hours. Looking back at it, I wrote it all down on my phone the next morning. I was
Yeah.
like, I need to remember all these details because I'm going to forget. Um, but yeah, so I'm like rocking or I'm like in the fetal position. They say they see hair. And at this point, they had said, like, oh, there's meconium. Things are going to move quickly, but she's already coming out. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay. And when they had said meconium, I had known like, okay, that's a possible like aspiration issue, whatever, but it's not completely unheard of for babies to poop on their way out.
Yeah.
And the nurse had even said like, it's normal, don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay. And the nurse had also said like when she saw me kind of struggling to get comfortable, she was like, you know, these contractions don't control you. You're in control of your body. I'm like, okay. I'm like, whatever you say, I'm going to be like, okay. Because I'm like,
You are there.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, whatever words of encouragement I'll take, right? Even if whatever they don't make sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then I'm pushing on my side, and I think the OB and the midwife finally come in because they're like, oh, head, you know, now this is our time to shine. So they come in, and they keep trying to get me on my back because I'm curled up on my right side with my legs closed. Actually, is how her head started coming out. My legs weren't open. I wasn't in any fancy position. My legs were literally closed. So I always tell women, you know, your legs don't have to be wide open. They can literally be closed. Your baby
Yeah.
will still come out. I
Yeah.
promise you.
Yeah.
Like, and they kept trying to flip me on my back, and I kept saying no because I like physically could not get on my back. Like I
Yeah.
was so uncomfortable. Like I have a baby coming out of my pelvis. I can't rotate like that
Yeah.
unless you're
No,
forcing me.
I agree completely.
Um, so uh they tried to get me to rotate and I was like, okay. So then I just flipped to my other side. I was like, well, you wanted me to move. So now I'm on my left side, not on my
Fair enough.
back. Yeah, just to like appease them, right? And they keep trying to stick me with an IV in the middle of all this because at this point I had no IV. I barely had a hospital like wristband on.
Yeah.
Because I'd only been there for like an hour. And so I'm not still enough for the IV. So they stop. I guess they tell the nurse, just stop, you know, like we'll get the IV after. And in my mind, I'm like, if the IV is not that important
Then why
right
are you trying
now,
to do it? Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
can't get it now, I mean, if it was life or death, you would get it, you know, but
Yeah.
it's clearly not.
Yeah.
So, so I get on my left side and there's like a student nurse there and, you know, the OB, the midwife, and I don't know any of these people because I've never been to this hospital. This is just the hospital my insurance covered and I knew I could go there in labor and my insurance would cover the birth there. But
Yeah.
I wasn't one of those people that was like, oh, I need to know my doctor about who's going to catch my baby. Like I went to my OB appointments with Kaiser, and so I would go to their clinics, but I didn't want to deliver at their hospital because their hospital was like 45 minutes away from me. So I was like, I need something way closer if I'm planning to labor at home. So I went to this one hospital that I'd never met anyone at. So um, yeah, I didn't know anyone, and I just knew like the birth was going to go my way regardless of who was in the room because I was the one giving birth. So I remember asking like the student nurse to kind of point my knee in, like, because I was laying on my left side. I asked her, "Can you just keep pointing my knee in and my ankle towards the ceiling?" And she like thought about it and she's like, "Okay." And I remember the OB was like, "Oh, like my back," like because she's hunched over trying to see under my leg. And I just remember saying, like, I remember thinking, why would you say my back in the middle of me?
Yeah, giving birth. Like, if you have an issue, you can stand up.
I'm like, you're gonna be done in like 2 seconds. The head's already out, you know?
Yeah.
But you know, a woman remembers everything in birth, like all the comments made around her. And
Hmm.
I mean, you're at this like heightened sense of like awareness almost because
Yeah.
it's just it's a different state of consciousness, really,
Yeah.
when you're in labor. So I remembered her saying that, and I just remember thinking, "What? Like, shut up! I'm like pushing
Yeah.
this baby." Um, and then not even a minute later, she's out, and it was about 10:45, 10:49 p.m. when she was born. So, I mean, I was at that hospital about a little over an hour, hour and a half. And yeah, and that's how she came out, and they immediately put her on my chest, and it was great. But I kind of felt like it happened so fast. I was in like shock.
Yeah.
I didn't have the crazy, beautiful, like, oh, I'm crying and I have this rush of emotions. And then I'm one of those people too, where I feel like I can't cry in front of people, like in front of, like a group of people like that. And then
Especially if you've not met them before, and yeah.
I've not met them. It's a room full of strangers. And then it's like, I mean, at work, I run into so many nurses and doctors and stuff. And so the hospital just doesn't feel like a place where I release myself and cry, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I noticed my fiance was tearing up when they placed her on my chest, but I was like, oh, like I feel so almost uncomfortable. Like I can't cry because for one, I'm still, now I'm on my back because they're worried about bleeding or whatever. And now they're sticking me with an IV, and now and they're running Pitocin, and they're doing all these things, which I don't know. See, I didn't know if this was hospital like protocol, if it was routine, or if I was actually hemorrhaging. They didn't make it seem like I was hemorrhaging, but they were like, "Oh, you have a small vessel that needs to be cauterized, and we're going to do that for you real quick. And oh, we're also going to insert this catheter into you so you can pee since you can't pee on command." And I'm just like, whoa, whoa, whoa! Like everything is happening so fast. Like I just gave birth, and now they're telling me all these things they're going to do to me. And that was, I would say, the only part of my birth experience I didn't like. It was just very like rushed, and right after the baby's out, they're worried about the placenta, and they're worried about this, and it's like I feel like that's what's led me with my second pregnancy to have a home birth, because I didn't like how at first the tension was kind of like, okay, mom's in labor, whatever. But then as soon as that baby's out, you're kind of like, you're just another person. You're just another patient. And you're
Yeah.
not really looked at like this woman who just had a life-changing event. Like I was a first-time mom.
Yeah. It's that thing as well. It's like this first time you've done it, it's your first experience. You remember that for the rest of your life. They do
Yeah,
it 5, 10, 15 times a day in every shift, every week, and they won't be able to pick out one birth from another.
right.
So it is just like a conveyor belt to them.
Yes. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm just like more of an emotional soul at heart, but not in front of people. I was just like, I didn't like that. I did not like
Yeah.
feeling like just another, body on the bed. I just didn't like that. And so that's what's led me to, seek out a midwifery care this time, and not go through the hospital setting, because I'm a little more informed now. And I'm more aware of like firsthand, like how interventions can be so aggressive, like after
Hmm.
birth. And I understand completely, like if you're hemorrhaging and you're having, I get it. Like
Yeah.
I work in the healthcare field,
Yeah.
but
I mean, we were chatting before we started recording about there's a time and a place for everything. And whether you have
right.
a home birth or whether you're in hospital, there's always, I said, there's a time and a place for things. And if you are hemorrhaging out or there's something going wrong, then yes, you need medical attention. But actually, if
Exactly.
everything's going how it's meant to be, just let it do what it's meant to do.
Hmm. But that's the thing. Hospitals don't, I would say most hospitals don't have kind of like a wait and see approach the way the midwifery care model does, where it's kind of more personalized. They explain all this to you ahead of time so that you don't leave and you don't feel kind of like violated afterwards, like, oh, what happened? I don't really understand. Nobody explained anything to me.
Yeah.
And so that's my biggest thing, like about the whole like hospital birth. Like I did not have a horrible hospital experience. I wasn't forced, I could be mainly because I wasn't there long enough for them to really force anything on me.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if it'd be different if I had chose to labor there and not home, but I'm pretty sure it would have, because
Yeah.
bright lights and sterile rooms are not places that make me comfortable, are not places that make me comfortable.
No.
So
And you absolutely wouldn't have been able to straighten your hair for 4 hours either. So
yeah. So yeah, then she's born, yeah, I thought I would cry, and I didn't cry, and I just thought that's weird. And I wonder if I'm like messing with the whole like emotional release, because I'm like, I didn't have that immediate like, oh my gosh. It was just more shocking and more like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then they're like doing all this stuff to me. But yeah, we ended up staying for 2 days, which I think was unnecessary. But after realizing it was because I had good insurance, and they're probably like, oh, you just, you can stay.
Oh,
We're
well,
going to
we'll
do this
milk
next.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, because I didn't need a blood transfusion. They said like, oh yeah, you lost some blood, but I'm like, I mean, what is some? Is that a lot? Is that, because I didn't need a blood transfusion. They said my blood levels were returning back to normal afterwards. And so I'm like, I don't feel like I truly hemorrhaged. I just feel like I was kind of victim to like, they're just protocol. And it kind
Yeah.
of scared me because I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know. Like when I go to work, we only do stuff when it's like medically necessary. We're not poking IVs in everybody that gets on the ambulance,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it was just I kind of felt like, ugh, like I wonder what my body would have done had they not been so like prophylactic in all their measures of,
Yeah.
Trying to control bleeding. But
Which, by the
yeah.
sounds of it, is one of the major reasons why you've chosen to home birth this time round.
Yeah, I don't want to feel frantic. And if I feel like I need to cry after giving birth, I want to feel safe enough to do that.
Yeah. And that's another thing as well. You've got to feel safe in your birthing environment to be able to have the right birthing experience anyway. If you don't
Yeah.
feel safe, it's going to end up causing problems. So if you're in an
Yeah.
environment that you feel safe to be able to cry, then you're in a safe environment to be able to give birth naturally. So I think you're doing well
Yes.
for you.
No, I agree. Like I don't know, because I tell like other family members and stuff like women in my family that are around my age and having babies and stuff, like I'm the only one in my family that's on the whole like home birth and birth isn't a medical event and stuff. Everyone else is like, what? Like, this is what my OB said, that's what I'm doing. Like, um they don't even want to think twice about it, which is their choice. But I just feel like, I don't know, you kind of rob yourself of a crazy experience, a crazy
Yeah.
good experience, if you choose to kind of ignore the information that's out there, or just ignore like the facts about physiological birth.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I just feel like it's the connection and the experience is so rich that not knowing, like the fact that there's women that don't ever experience that is crazy to me, because I'm like, wow, like I got to experience that. And it's like, I mean, different state of consciousness, like different state of awareness. Like it's just so human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's it for this episode of the Mother Gaia Birthy Pod. A huge, huge thank you to Anna Barker for sharing her powerful birth story and showing us what it means to stand in your power. Her journey is a reminder that self-advocacy isn't just about fighting for what you want, it's about knowing your options, trusting your instincts, and owning your birth experience in a way that feels right for you. And I really truly hope that she gets to have her home birth experience with her second child. If this episode has resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Connect with me on social media and let's keep the conversation going. You'll find all the links in the show notes. And now I'm introducing something new. I'll be answering listeners' questions in upcoming episodes. So if there's something you've been wondering about pregnancy, birth, postpartum or beyond, send me your questions in all the usual ways. I'd love to hear from you and help bring more insight and support into our community. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Let's spread the message that every birthing person deserves to feel informed, supported and in control. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.